I am at Copenhagen International to fly on Atlantic Airways to the Faroe Islands. Here at Terminal 2 at Copenhagen, they either use kiosks or you can speak to an agent if you are checking a bag. Given the Faroe Islands is an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, this link between Vágar in the Faroe Islands and Copenhagen here in Denmark is very important for the airline. And in fact, this link between Copenhagen and Vágar is the airline's busiest route, being served at least twice daily year-round, and in the peak tourist season they do sometimes see 4 and maybe even 5 daily flights between Copenhagen and the Faroe Islands. I will be using the words Faroe Islands as well as Vágar Airport interchangeably when referring to this airport and the place I'm going to, as a lot of airline and booking websites do the same exact thing, given that it is the country's only airport. My aircraft for this flight over to the Faroe Islands will be RCM, an Airbus A320 that was originally delivered to Air France in April of 2012, went to Irish company Avalon in July of 2022, and then came here to Atlantic Airways in March of 2023, and carries the name Ellenborg Lutsen, who was a Faroese graphic designer, and you can read more about her by pausing the video here. The flight was originally scheduled to depart at 12:25 noon, but did get delayed until about 2:15 p.m., which can sometimes be common given the geographic location of the Faroe Islands and how the wind and the clouds and the visibility affect the airport. To help lessen the effects of weather and visibility on their operations in the Faroe Islands, the airline equipped something on their aircraft called RNP AR01, and I'll talk about it more once we're in the air. This particular aircraft in the airline's fleet has 178 passenger seats in an all-economy layout, and for this flight over to Vágar Airport, I'll be in 6F, a window on the right side of the aircraft.
Prioritera ikke noe trygt med alle betinget til ikke andre småtalere fra forurensning.
Ladies and gentlemen, your captain, welcome aboard and I shall ready for departure to the Faroe Islands flight time. This estimates around 2 hours and 5 minutes. The weather route is fine in the Faroes. The weather at the moment, there's the wind from the south with the low clouds and low visibility, and the temperature around 12 degrees. We have delayed this flight for around 2 hours because we are expecting the weather to improve a little bit when we arrive in 2 hours from now. Otherwise, in a short while now we show the safety demonstration, so please observe carefully, and then we'll talk to you again when we are getting close to the Faroes. Have a nice flight.
some of the features of this aircraft. I'm 5'4" for reference, and I had a decent amount of room underneath the seat in front of me for my feet, as well as between my knees and the seat in front of me. The seat back pocket is pretty basic and is just a net, but that's fine as a lot of the routes this aircraft go on are relatively short. Here you'll be able to see the difference of what the seat looks like when it's in its upright position as well as when it's reclined. All of the tray tables on the aircraft are full size, which is plenty of room for a computer or a device to put on there, considering they do have internet on board the aircraft. In the seat back pocket, there is not only a safety card, but an in-flight menu for those that would like to get snacks or drinks. There are plenty of options from snacks and drinks to alcoholic beverages as well as a light meal. In the seat back pocket, there is also an in-flight magazine, which a lot of airlines in North America have gone away from, but I'm glad Atlantic Airways still has them, as they do feature not only the route map, but also a detailed description of the aircraft in their fleet, the specific tail numbers, and what each of them are called and why, including my aircraft, but I'll skip that as I already put that description at the beginning of this video before we left Copenhagen. However, if you would like to read it now, you can pause here as well. Their route map is split up into 3 sections: Europe routes, Nordic routes, and Sun routes. They have also had the New York route at the time I made this video, and that's not really any of the 3 sections. And like I mentioned previously, they do offer a wide variety of purchase on board as well as purchase beforehand options. But for those that are looking for a complimentary option, they offer either coffee, tea, or water. While Atlantic Airways is not the only airline that flies this Copenhagen to Faroe Islands route, they are definitely the most fun and sensible option considering that you are going to the country they are based in, and their pilots have a lot of experience landing in the challenging conditions that the islands sometimes do face, and have extra training for that as well. As I previously mentioned, this route is very, very important to the airline considering the economic and political ties between the 2 countries, and the airline does operate this route twice a day year-round, but during the peak tourist season they do operate it 4 times a day, and sometimes even 5. Atlantic Airways does offer internet via their AirFi digital entertainment system, which you can connect to on your device, and you can watch movies as well as TV, do Faroe Islands Translate, as Faroese is not one of the main languages supported in Google Translate. You can look at their in-flight magazine in the virtual form, look at the About Us section, or there is also a kids section as well where they do offer a couple of games, and of course the in-flight moving map. And before I knew it, we were already beginning our descent into Vágar Airport and the Faroe Islands.
Ladies and gentlemen, your captain will start the approach upon to Vágar. At the moment, the weather is not good enough for an approach, so we will enter holding east of the airport, and where we can stay for at least 1 hour or so, but I'll keep you informed when the weather, or if the weather will improve. Thank you.
As mentioned previously, the Atlantic Airways aircraft do have an extra system on board them called RNP AR01, which stands for Required Navigation Performance with Authorization Required, and is a more demanding type of approach that requires specific aircraft and crew qualifications, as well as special authorization from the FAA, which I guess in this case would be the EASA, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. The RNP AR approach systems are designed for operations that require more precise navigation, where reduced clearance tolerances are needed, and is a perfect system for the Atlantic Airways crew as well as aircraft, considering sometimes the visibility in the Faroe Islands is not the greatest. The airline was actually one of the first to have it in Europe, and they were one of the pioneers for the RNP AR01 system in Europe back in 2012, and actually received an award for it. In the early 2010s, Atlantic Airways was investigating the use of implementing the AR01 system, but they soon learned that even though the RNP AR had been successfully implemented around the world in many different locations, there was no previous application with the low value. They had to get the Vágar Airport as well as Danish aviation authorities involved, along with Airbus, as this system was being implemented in their new A319 that they had at the time. And they decided to not only construct but get authorization for the RNP AR procedures at the highest possible precision rating at 01, so as to take best possible advantage of the technology given the terrain and visibility that can sometimes happen in the Faroe Islands. Most of the information that I just spouted off is from Safety First magazine in an article about Atlantic Airways introducing their RNP AR01 system and their operations, and I will put the link to that article in the description of this video.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now starting approach. Estimate we are grounded 7 minutes. We are expected some light turbulence.
The RNP AR01 system has been quite effective for Atlantic Airways, and you'll see that as we do manage to make it into the airport, even with the surrounding terrain and the very low visibility at Vágar Airport. And one of the best examples of how they do compare to other airlines getting into the airport is when another airline does fly the same route almost at the same time, like Icelandair from Reykjavik or SAS from Copenhagen, and each airline does go back to their origin as they can't land in the Faroe Islands with the low visibility, but Atlantic Airways continues on and manages to land because of that RNP AR01 system. That does not mean they have no restrictions at all. They do have a minimum they have to meet, but the requirements are a lot lower for Atlantic Airways here at this airport.
Välkommen hem. Vinneren lever ubåten til skiperen og slags med trykkamersmål og lærte jo ikke med interessant å bli marsene. Mer verden tar skapelig blivet det vi lærte jo.
I had an absolutely wonderful time flying from Copenhagen to Vágar Airport here in the Faroe Islands with Atlantic Airways, and it's always fun flying on the airline to the country it's based in. And that is definitely no exception here, considering the amount of training and expertise that goes into making a landing here at Vágar Airport, especially when the weather conditions are not so great and the visibility is almost none. As I mentioned previously once before in this video, there are times when Atlantic Airways is able to make it in and other airlines are not, and this is one of those times. On the day I took this trip, SAS did turn back to Copenhagen, and Icelandair didn't even bother making the journey at all and ended up canceling their flight from Reykjavik to Vágar. Meanwhile, Atlantic Airways did actually go back to Copenhagen and then make another trip back to Vágar in the evening of this video was made, so that RNP AR01 system is definitely paying off. I'm here in the Faroe Islands for 3 nights, and during my time here I go on a helicopter flight to Mykines, as well as interview the airline's CEO, and then I am on board Atlantic Airways' final flight to North America, Videos for all 3 of those are already up on my channel.